So this is a lot of analysts have pointed out that the escalation of tensions is very similar to the lead up to the invasion of Iraq, and I hope that those similarities are just superficial. But it does not bode well that that Congress went on recess early, right before, like right as the United States is taking these reckless sort of moves against Venezuela. The United States
No,
likes
Congress.
to get involved in military conflicts while Congress is in recess.
Yeah, Congress has not been very subtly, deftly utilized under this under the speakership of Mike Johnson. It's like you're not even trying to hide what you're doing, like ever. Are you going to release the Epstein files? Oh, we're actually going to go on break. Oh, you're going to, you know what I mean? Like, we're going to go on break, so there's no reason to talk about invading Venezuela. We'll just do it.
All right, so that's all I have for Venezuela. So let's move over to the other thing that we talk about on this show that's not Ukraine, and that is Israel. So this article from the Middle East Monitor says that the Israeli army has publicly warned of a potential mass exodus of its own permanent personnel due to a surge in resignation, requests from officers and non-commissioned officers, signaling a growing manpower and morale crisis within the Israeli Defense Forces. At least 500 officers and NCOs, non-commissioned officers, serving in the IDF have formally requested to resign or be relieved of duty. These are not reservists. These would be active duty.
Right,
like
like
that's
actually
permanent
a
career
really big
personnel.
deal. Yeah,
They're the
like this is actually a really big deal.
Yeah, huge deal. They're the backbone of the Israeli military. The IDF is primarily made of reservists that are activated for operations, like we've seen. There have been several waves of activations since October 7th, but they require a hardened and experienced corps of officers and NCOs to be able to lead operations. They're what carries through the discipline, the training to these reservists who, as we've seen previously, are completely unreliable,
Extremely undisciplined.
Yeah, and so the mass exodus of hardened career officers from the Israeli military is it's a warning sign, if nothing else. A major factor behind these resignations is quoted as being low pay and unresolved financial grievances, including delays in approving increased pension entitlements for officers and soldiers, and the strain of prolonged wartime service. So these active duty officers and NCOs have been engaged in combat the entire time, whereas reservists are cycled out and then reactivated after they've been at home doing their regular jobs for a while. These officers and non-commissioned officers have been fighting the entire time. Army officials warn that this trend could significantly degrade and weaken overall military efficacy and weaken command continuity and degrade institutional experience.
I mean, that's definitely what's going to happen.
Yeah,
it's not like
I hope it does.
It could. It definitely does. Yeah. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, fuck them. So Israel has been also dealing with significant military pressure from the war itself. There have been heavy casualties and morale problems from prolonged deployments and the nature of the genocidal war that they're waging. Earlier reports have shown that the army has already faced shortages in some combat leadership positions and are struggling to fill key roles due to attrition, being, suicide, death, injury, or wounding, whatever, casualties of some sort. Something that hasn't been discussed is waves of early retirements. So generally in situations like this, you can convince people to stay on even when they reach retirement. But a lot of people have been retiring anyway, and a lot of other people are taking the option to retire early instead. So there's been like a sort of attrition on the top end of it, where a lot of people are retiring and then just moving away from Israel, or retiring and going into private life and not having to serve as reservists because they've already fulfilled their contracts. Anyway, so the
Yeah,
Israeli army.
the number of people who are moving out of Israel, that's what's really fascinating to
Oh yeah,
me.
it's staggering.
Because it's like, I mean, there's not like a direct equivalent, but like there are a whole bunch of like like convicted or soon to be convicted pedophiles moving to Israel, and a bunch of career military personnel moving out of Israel. It's a
The great replacement.
yeah, exactly.
Use, useful useful military aged men leaving and weird old pedophiles coming in. What a cool country, man.
Yeah, definitely the coolest country. Definitely
Definitely.
a country which deserves to exist, has a right to exist.
Yeah, I mean, just let me list off the virtues here: genocide, weird old pedophiles.
I mean, what else do you need?
Yeah, I know.
That's 2 out of 2, man.
um, this is all part of a broader personnel exodus that undermines military capacity unless conditions improve or the issues of compensation are resolved. So I think even if issues of compensation were resolved, the terrible conditions would lead to people still fleeing the country and quitting the military.
Yeah, almost certainly.
So I mean, in other Israel news, it's this low scale genocide still continues. There's a partial starvation of the people of Gaza. They're letting in just enough aid so that they can say that they're letting in aid while people are being evacuated due to malnutrition, and they're still doing airstrikes and raids on Gaza and the West Bank and killing smaller numbers of people. Basically, they just turned the genocide knob from 11 down to about 6. So it's
I could say
still
more
going
like
on.
9.
They're still breaking the ceasefire constantly. They're still committing a genocide, and there's still an irredeemable demonic pedophile apartheid state.
Yeah, I mean, they violate the ceasefire like on a daily basis.
Yeah, hundreds of times, hundreds, maybe thousands. I
Yeah.
don't know. Okay, so moving on, there's a Yale Humanitarian Research Lab report that shows the atrocities and cover up by Sudan's rapid response forces in Al Fashur in northern Darfur. The Yale HRL report shows that there have been evidence of mass killings after the city was captured. That's something that we've talked about already, and that it's been talked about exhaustively elsewhere. So the RSF seized El Fashur on the 26th of October. It took control of the city after a months-long siege, and using high resolution satellite images, the Yale Humanitarian Research Lab is able to identify patterns that are consistent with the widespread systematic killing of civilians. The analysis shows clusters of objects which appear to be human remains that were not present before RSF control. So piles of human bodies that showed up on satellite imaging, and the satellite imagery also shows reddish ground discoloration consistent with massed blood and bodily fluid spillage near the clusters.
Damn.
The researchers
That's harsh. That sucks.
Yeah. Researchers also noted 4 distinct patterns of violence. 1, killing of civilians who attempted to flee the city. 2, door-to-door executions in the residential neighborhoods. And 3, killing at points linked to detention or security screening. And 4, killing of near military and fortified positions. So those would be like captured soldiers and whatnot. And there was also evidence of deliberate cover-up. After the initial killings, the imagery suggested a systemic multi-week campaign to hide or destroy evidence. So there have been burial operations, likely involving trenches and mass graves. Burial operations, which include bodies being dumped into trenches or other mass graves, burning of bodies, and removal of remains from earlier identified clusters where objects appeared and then later disappeared. So basically, they showed piles of bodies that disappeared from one image to the next. And then, of course, it appears as though they were burning piles of bodies. So the HRL noted that the burial and disposal operations look different from normal community burials observed before the RSF takeover. So instead of small individual burial mounds, the imagery showed that there are mass burials going on and burnings, mass burials and burnings going on. So this is all satellite data imagery. So it's not conclusive, but it is pretty conclusive.
It's pretty likely.
It's pretty likely that that's what's going on.
It's amazing how seems like it's shaping up to be a lot like the last mass killing, ethnic cleansing, genocide campaign in the same region, in that it's getting more attention at the time, like as it's happening, but
yeah,
it's not really getting the kind of intervention that you would expect, or that not that you would expect, that you should be able to expect from
right.
But also the same is true, just whatever, everywhere, every time that this kind of thing happens, the level of interest that the world takes is always shockingly low.
Yeah, in Africa, people don't care what happens in Africa. I mean, obviously Africans do, but people in the global community only care what happens in the global community, meaning like Western Europe or Eastern Europe, if it suits the imperial agenda of NATO.
Right, like they care what happens in Eastern Europe if Russia is to blame.
If they can use it to check Russia's strength.
Right.
Yeah. So because the RSF controls the city, there's been very little reporting to come out of it. So that's why they have to rely on this satellite imagery. This massacre and cover-up occurs against the backdrop of a much broader and more catastrophic humanitarian crisis in Sudan's civil war. There have been millions displaced, there's severe food insecurity, and violence and massacres just keep happening and cyclically throughout Darfur and Kordofan and beyond. I don't know any of the names of the other places. Darfur is the name that keeps popping into the news, and it's the one that I've read about more extensively than the others. But so this is generally considered to be a credible allegation of war crimes against the RSF, which of course means that no one's going to do anything about it.
I mean, it's not for a while. Like maybe one day somebody will, like one person might go to jail.
There have been local social media posts that seem to corroborate what's going on. Social media is a lot harder to crack down on than independent reporting. Okay, so moving on to the bread and butter of this podcast, and that is the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So there was recently a series of attacks against, quote, Russia's shadow fleet in the Mediterranean Sea, and then another one in the Black Sea. So the Ukraine Security Service, the SBU, has supposedly struck Russian-linked shadow fleet oil tankers using aerial drones. So that the one that happened in the Mediterranean was the first time that Ukraine had hit a vessel in the open ocean, and that was over 2,000 kilometers away. So I just wanted to the first target was this tanker sailing under the Omani flag, which was empty at the time, and it suffered critical damage, leaving the vessel no longer usable. What is a shadow fleet? It doesn't exist. The shadow fleet is just any tanker that insures itself outside of the London insurance maritime insurance market and continues to do business with Russia. That's what, quote, shadow fleet is. There's no such
Okay.
thing as a shadow fleet. London used to have a monopoly on maritime insurance. Everybody went through these London firms for maritime insurance. And these insurance firms made sure that all of the ships that they insured were up to a certain standard, meaning that they had to be modern, they had to have safety implements to make sure they didn't go down and cause oil spills and, cost the insurance company a lot of money. But there are other places to insure vessels outside of London, and very few did previous to the invasion of Ukraine. But ever since the sanctions against Russia, there is now a new burgeoning market for insurance outside of London. So people are now insuring their vessels in other places. And that's what they're calling the shadow fleet, is anybody who insures their vessels outside of the London market and then continues to do business with Russia in defiance of sanctions.
Anybody who is innovative and disrupts the market.